Coming up next, Mega Man X, specifically Mega Man X 1 through 4. What made this series so memorable, and why did it drop off so hard? Let's talk about Mega Man X. Not to be confused with your standard vanilla innocent Mega Boy classic, or his very adult counterpart Mega Man XXX, where his Buster Gun is probably his wiener or something. Mega Man X sat somewhere in the middle and was designed to appeal to kids who grew up with classic Mega Man and were now a bunch of teens. Teens that liked rock and roll and saying hard things like, damn.
Where's that damn fourth Chaos Emerald?
There were 8 games in the X series, and a few spin-off games as well, making it a reasonably popular series at the time. Frankly, it's a crime against humanity that the last mainline entry to the franchise was a whole 20 years ago. Help me, Keiji Inafune, you're our only hope. Hype for the series is still alive though, likely helped by Capcom releasing modern ports of their various Mega Man series, with the X series bundled together in 2006 and 2017. Which is great because it's an amazing series, and I'd sell my left nut for Mega Man X9. I don't know why anyone would want to buy a single nut, but the offer's on the table. You could use it as a punching bag for all I care. But the cold hard reality is that this series is likely dead. Deader than Disco, deader than Clifford the Big Red Dog after he ate a giant chocolate bar. He's Clifford the Big Dead Dog. So rather than hoping for the future, let's spend some time appreciating the past. This is the Mega Man X series retrospective.
No, this isn't happening! There's no reason for me to go on. What? What am I fighting for?
Don't get too comfortable. This is a dangerous situation.
I thought the car was supposed to move us. Wouldn't that be nice?
Can it? Ready, steady, ready, steady, ready, steady.
Mega Man, can you hear me?
This is Snake. Kept you waiting, huh? Are you familiar with Big Chunk?
A scattered dream is like a far-off memory.
Gotta give it my all. Hope you're ready. We can't save the world from a CD player.
Regardless of the name, X and the original Mega Man are 2 different characters, despite 8-year-old Wes being adamant that they were one and the same and refusing to believe that the original Mega Man was freaking dead. Both were created by Dr. Light, a brilliant scientist who somehow made the most advanced robots ever, despite spending all of his free time day drinking.
You must recover all the energy immediately, Mega Man.
But where is Dr. Wily?
That's a good question. We may be able to locate another energy emission from the radar room. When we find that meteor, we'll find Dr. Wily.
X was the first robot ever created with free will. Dr. Light was like, whoops, maybe I shouldn't have done that, and proceeds to lock X away in a capsule so he could safely test his decision-making skills. 100 years pass, and X is found by another scientist named Dr. Kane, who was so fascinated by X's free will that he decides to copy that technology and use it in his own line of robot creations. He calls these free will bots Reploids and mass produces them. It doesn't take very long though before many of them decide to revolt against humanity. These renegade Reploids are called Mavericks. Some of these Reploids go maverick due to a glitch in their system, and some of them simply choose violence. And you know what? If I were designed to look like a sunflower, I might want to burn down a city too. So, the overarching story of the series is simply that X needs to stop these Mavericks and save mankind. Helping X is his fellow Maverick hunter, Zero, who Mega Man creator Keiji Inafune wanted to be the main character initially, but that idea was shot down by Capcom. Slow your roll, hotshot. You only made one of the most iconic and recognizable characters in all video gamedom. Why should we trust that you'd be able to do it a second time? No, make it about Mega Man, and you could put Zero in as an advisor character, like Roy Campbell from Metal Gear, or Wilson from Home Improvement. The main antagonist and leader of the Mavericks is Mark Cuban. Wait, that can't be right. Sigma. I wonder if Sigma is related to Ligma. Ligma balls!
Got him!
Sigma is a real slippery son of a bitch who just will not die.
Why won't you die?
He was originally created by Dr. Kane to stop the Mavericks, but of course ends up defecting and leading the Maverick cause instead. By this point in the story, Dr. Kane has single-handedly manufactured the greatest threats to humanity, and somehow isn't locked up in some secret offshore prison. I mean, what's it gonna take to revoke this dude's military contract? Jeez. Like the original series, you play through 8 levels, with each level ending in a boss fight, and once you beat the boss, you'll gain their special power. Once all 8 bosses are defeated, a final level will unlock where you'll go through the ringer, taking on all the cumulative challenges faced up till that point, including refighting 8 bosses again, ultimately climaxing with a final, multi-formed boss battle against Sigma. I hope you like this formula, baby, because it is the only one you'll be getting. Now that we've covered the basics, let's dive into the first game. While in development, this game was called Super Rockman, continuing the SNES's famous title gimmick like Super Star Wars, or Super Castlevania, or Balls. Anyways, it was eventually renamed to Rockman X. This caused some confusion with gamers at the time, thinking that X stood for the number 10. Like, wait, Mega Man 5, 6, then 10? Huh? Like I mentioned earlier, X was designed for a slightly more mature audience. Classic Mega Man had very round and cartoony features. His design was inspired by Astro Boy after all. X, on the other hand, was taller and older looking, with more emphasis on his armor and weaponry. The box art for X1 was the first time a lot of us ever saw him, and in his ultimate armor, which you could unlock in the game, he kinda looks like a Gundam wing. This was a pretty radical departure from what fans were expecting at the time. A big change in his design came from the upgrade from the NES to the SNES. With more colors and pixels to work with, the designers had a lot more options than just blue, white, and black. Designer Hyoto Kaji said that the freedom the SNES allowed made it hard to pin down a look, because the sky was the limit. White gloves, a ruby headpiece, and other details were added with the new SNES sprites in mind. The instruction manual for the game goes into greater detail about how Dr. Kane discovered X. It's little lore-building oddities like this we just don't see in modern games anymore. Well, except for Palpatine's resurrection happening in Fortnite.
The great error is corrected. The day of victory is at hand. The day of revenge.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
Actually, you know what? How about we don't do this and we just keep the story in the game, you know? Anyways, the long and short of it is that Dr. Kane discovered X in the ruins of Dr. Light's lab and was amazed to discover that X was capable of thinking and making his own decisions. After creating Reploids based on X's design, it only takes a few months before the first instances of Maverick behavior starts to surface. Sigma is assigned to head the newly formed Maverick Hunters, but sure enough, he goes Maverick too. Kane says that most of the human population is in hiding due to Sigma's attacks, and I think it's an interesting bit of dialogue because the X series does very little in actually giving us context or information about what the humans are up to, like, ever. Even in X5, when, spoiler alert, most of humanity is wiped out, we literally never see a human being reacting to any of it. This little story in the manual isn't much, but it does give a little bit of background at least. Fun fact, Sigma's symbol is the Greek symbol for Sigma, but it was originally going to be a cobra, with a mount making the shape of a W, alluding to a connection with Dr. Wily. If you look closely, you could see it. X1 begins with this fractured highway stage that serves as a good warm-up for the rest of the game. I can easily say that I've played this specific level more than any other in video games, both from repeated playthroughs of X1 and all the times I'd test out controls on a SNES emulator by loading this game first. And it is indeed a good level. I mean, if this music doesn't get you pumped, I don't know what will. Speaking of which, the soundtrack for Mega Man X is just amazing. I don't think there's a single track I don't like, and all these years later I could hum or whistle each stage theme without really having to think that hard. That's a good sign of a memorable soundtrack. The actual sound quality is definitely handicapped by the limits of the Super Nintendo, with a lot of the music sounding really tinny and compressed, but hey, that's just how it was in the early 90s. Great soundtrack regardless. The opening stage ends with an unwinnable boss fight against Vile, also known as Purple Boba Fett, who's a henchman for Sigma. I'm sure many others, like myself, tried in vain to beat him without realizing he's invincible. Fortunately, Zero swoops in to save the day. X laments that he isn't strong enough to fight Sigma, and Zero gives him some encouraging words. There's very little story in the first X game, but this scene does show us a little of X and Zero's friendship. The 8 Maverick bosses in the first game are iconic and easily my favorite lineup. You've got such classics as Electric Monkey, Slippery Penguin, and Out of Touch Old Son of a Bitch. I have a monopoly on all the housing and jobs in this town, and I'll make sure that no one is paid more than slave wages. But you know why these young Reploids are really going Maverick? Because they keep buying coffee and avocado toast. Okay, Boomer. Also, apparently there was going to be a Chimera-looking Maverick, as we could see in this beta footage, but that's the only reference we have to it. What is that, a Maverick or my ex-wife? While you can play any stage in whatever order you want, there is an ideal order, as fans of the original series are well aware. Each boss doesn't just give you their special weapon, they're also weak against one of those weapons. Chill Penguin is weak against Flame Mammoth's weapon, Spark Mandrill is weak against Chill Penguins, etc, etc. This is basically an automatic easy mode for those players that choose to use them. The Mavericks are so crippled by their weaknesses that the fights are almost impossible to lose. I like that this is added as a way for less skilled players to still be able to enjoy the game, but maybe a middle ground would have been that they take less damage so that you could still have an actual fight. I mean, look at this shit. There's no sport in this. The special weapons include the Boomerang Cutter, the Chameleon Sting, the Electric Spark, the Fire Wave, the Homing Torpedo, the Rolling Shield, the Shotgun Ice, and the Storm Tornado. Personally, I rarely use the secondary weapons in Mega Man games because I find that half the time they're not really worth the effort, and the limited uses puts unneeded pressure on me to conserve ammo, so I just don't bother. That being said, I do really like how useful the Storm Tornado is for taking out multiple enemies. The Homing Torpedo is useful too for out-of-reach enemies. The Shotgun Ice and Rolling Shield do so little damage that they're basically worthless though. One last detail that I want to mention is that certain attacks will have a unique effect on the Mavericks despite not being their direct weakness. For example, Launch Octopus's direct weakness is supposed to be the Rolling Shield weapon, but if you use the Boomerang Cutter, it will chop off his freaking arms.
It is but a scratch. A scratch? Your arm's off. No, it isn't. Well, what's that then? I've had worse.
I don't even feel good about this fight anymore, it just feels wrong fighting a torso. It'll also cut off Flame Mammoth's trunk, John Wayne Bobbitt style. An interesting detail about the stages is that their design changes depending on the order you fight the Mavericks. If you beat Chill Penguin first, then Flame Mammoth stage will be frozen over. If you beat Launch Octopus, then Sting Chameleon stage will be flooded. My favorite is defeating Storm Eagle. The ship you fight him on will crash into Spark Mandrill stage, cutting the power to the building. These changes are a fun addition that gives a little bit more story and immersion in a world that's otherwise not particularly fleshed out. While the stages are relatively linear, there's a fair amount of hidden things to discover, making each playthrough a little different. There's this underwater dragon boss you could fight, or this forest robot. The stages have a lot of verticality to them too, especially Storm Eagle's. It makes you feel like there's multiple ways of going about things, rather than just running down a line. I think X1 easily has some of the best stages, with plenty of enemy variety, challenge, and nuance to keep the player engaged. There are definitely stages I like more in later games, but the later Mega Man X games would lean hard into gimmicks to keep things interesting, at the expense of sacrificing core gameplay. X1 keeps things simple and is constantly challenging the player to use the skills they've learned along the way, rather than tossing curveballs at them. To make X's journey a little smoother, he'll get power upgrades via hidden capsules littered throughout the game, left for him by Dr. Light. Aw, that's nice of him. Dr. Light has long since passed, but he did go through the effort of hiding capsules with upgrades and holograms inside them, and scattering these capsules in multiple locations all throughout the world. How he managed to pull that off is beyond me, and how X was the first and only person in 100 years to discover them is also beyond me. Keiji Inafune explained that due to role-playing games becoming more popular, he wanted to incorporate certain RPG elements within Mega Man, and that led to the upgradable armor idea that would continue for the remainder of the series. These upgrades let him dash, increase his defense, and more. The dash would pretty much become a standard move from that point on, and hopefully you're playing this game on a version that allows button remapping. Otherwise, your hand will be the mayor of Cramp City. You thought a Charlie horse in the deep end of the swimming pool was bad? Just wait till you try to play a Mega Man X game with dash on the A button. Here's a little anecdote about the wall jump that nobody asked for. According to Inafune, the development of X1 was hell, with the planning team taking forever to communicate with the developers. Team members would play games all day, and some would even leave work to go bet on horse races or gamble at the casino. Inafune was so frustrated, he decided to incorporate kicking a wall into the game's mechanics. Whether this was truly his inspiration for the wall kick, I don't know, but hey, that's from the man himself. Personally, the wall jump is probably the main reason I have no desire to go back and replay any of the original Mega Man games. Classic Mega Man always felt very grounded to me, and by that, I mean he felt very heavy and clunky to control. With the wall jump, X can achieve a level of movement and flexibility that classic Mega Man never could, and in turn, he's way more fun to play as. I love you, classic Mega Man, but you're no match for the overly caffeinated X, hopping off the walls like friggin' Spider-Man. The Buster upgrade will allow you to charge your secondary weapon, which will unleash a whole new move. For example, charging the Chameleon Sting will give X temporary invincibility, and charging the Shotgun Ice will create a cute little ice block that X could use as a toboggan. Yeah, Shotgun Ice still sucks. In a few stages, you'll find Ride Armor, which is a giant mech suit X can get into and ride around. The Ride Armor can dash, punch, and jump, and the armor absorbs any damage that would have been meant for X. Keiji Inafune said that for the X series, he wanted a sense of style and luxury that wasn't possible on the NES, and he wanted the Ride Armor to exemplify that. While it's not exactly a Gundam Wing, more like a Rock'em Sock'em robot, actually, it is definitely a cool addition and mixes up the gameplay a bit. Also hidden throughout the 8 stages are heart canisters that increase your max health, and sub-tanks that let you store extra health. But the real secret of this game is Mega Man getting access to the Hadouken move from Street Fighter. I won't list all the requirements here, but believe me when I say it's very tedious, and actually requires you to throw yourself off a cliff multiple times. Only in death can we truly be free! The Hadouken is pretty sweet though, as it one-hit kills any enemy, including bosses. It's pretty funny listening to Sigma giving a speech about how he's all-powerful, and hyping you up for this epic fight, and then instantly killing him in 1 second. Hadouken! NANI? Speaking of the Sigma fight, it's pretty dang difficult without cheating, as he has this sick-ass lightsaber and a big attack radius. In fact, the whole game could be pretty challenging, but not in a cheap way. The enemy placement and difficulty is perfectly balanced, except for Sigma Fortress 1, this part. Challenging but fair is a good summation of the first Mega Man X game, but unfortunately, it's the only entry in the series I'll be able to say that about. But we'll get into that later.
Why are we still here? Just to suffer?
Anyways, before the Sigma fight, Vile reappears and challenges X, and Zero sacrifices himself to weaken Vile enough for X to finish him off. Zero dies, and it's a shame that we've barely gotten to know him at all, but I mean, he's a robot, he'll probably be fine. X faces off against Sigma's second form, a giant wolf mech, and this boss fight is no joke. Not the hardest fight in the series, but it's definitely a doozy. After a few well-placed shots, Sigma is finally down for the count. X has come a long way from the beginning of the story, when he was just a rookie Maverick hunter getting his ass beat by Vile. He gives Sigma's defeat a lot more weight and satisfaction to it. Sigma promises to usher in a new age of Reploid dominance, and that he'll return someday to get revenge on X. Mega Man watches from a nearby cliff as Sigma's fortress crumbles into the sea. He has sort of an existential crisis about having to kill so many of his fellow Reploids, but don't worry, less than a year later he'll be back in Mega Man X2 to kill some more. When Mega Man X was first released in 1993 and 94, it sold really well, over 1 million copies within 7 years, and it got rave reviews from critics. It was considered the breath of new life the Mega Man series needed after years of the same old thing on the NES. X1 just feels so good to play. It's perfectly balanced, with just the right amount of challenge. The story is simple but effective, the music is excellent, just an all-around great game, and it's definitely earned its place in video game history.
Capcom.
If you like this video, hey, how about you hit the like button and then go subscribe to my channel. I've got other Mega Man videos you could check out, and plenty of other long-form retrospective videos as well. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon for part 2.